I always used to think loyalty was simple, something woven into your DNA, passed down through family like a birthmark. Maybe that's why, when mom and dad died, I didn't think twice. I was 23 with a decent job, barely out of college, and my sister Ava had just turned 16. She was still a child in every way, angry at the world, reckless with her choices, and so quick to cry it used to tear me up inside. I could have sent her to live with an aunt in Colorado or a cousin she barely knew, but I didn't. I told everyone I'd take care of her. I told her I'd take care of her. And for the next 8 years, that's exactly what I did. Every debt she racked up, I paid it. Every mistake she made, I cleaned it up. I worked 2 jobs just to get her through college while I shelved my dream of grad school and a career in architecture. I told myself it was worth it. She was worth it. Because that's what big brothers do, right? They sacrifice so their younger siblings can fly. Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. I still remember her first year of college like it was yesterday. She had trouble adjusting, missed classes, failed tests, got mixed up with the wrong kind of guy. I drove 4 hours one night just to pick her up from a police station after she was caught drinking underage at a party that got raided. I didn't yell. I didn't scold. I held her like Dad used to and told her she was going to be okay, that we'd figure it out. Because that's how I showed love, by fixing things. It became second nature. I covered her rent more times than I can count, bought her groceries when she ran out, paid off her credit card bill without ever telling her I knew about it. To the world, she was a free spirit. To me, she was my burden, but a burden I carried with pride. I thought we were a team. I thought she saw me the same way I saw her, as family, as something sacred. Things changed when I met Ella. I was 31 by then. A little more tired, a little more worn, but still hopeful. She was the kind of woman who listened when you spoke and remembered the little things, like how I took my coffee or what my favorite jazz song was. We met at a charity event through work, and by our third date, I knew. I hadn't dated seriously in years, too busy raising Ava, too protective of my time, but Ella made it feel easy, natural, like maybe after all the giving, I was finally allowed to receive. And when I brought her home to meet Ava, my sister lit up with this strange, bright enthusiasm. Said she loved her instantly, hugged her like they'd been friends forever. It felt good at the time. It felt safe. I thought maybe this was what healing looked like, 2 parts of my heart finding common ground. Ella and Ava got close quickly. They bonded over books and interior design, and some indie band I never really cared for. At first, I loved it. It made family dinners feel warm again. The laughter came back into our apartment. They shared inside jokes and late-night wine chats, and I'd hear them giggling in the kitchen while I worked on invoices in my home office. I'd poke my head in sometimes just to watch them laugh. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the life I built. After years of struggle, we finally had balance. A home. And then, a few months later, I proposed to Ella. I bought the ring with money I'd been saving for a down payment. Ava helped me pick it out. She even filmed the proposal with tears in her eyes. I asked her to be my maid of honor. She hugged me so tightly that I cried too. I told her this wedding was as much hers as it was mine. And I meant it. But there were moments, small ones, that didn't sit right. I ignored them at first because love does that to you. It makes you blind in all the places that matter. I'd walk into the living room and catch them sitting a little too close on the couch, their legs brushing. Or I'd hear them whispering behind the bedroom door and hush up the moment I stepped in. Once, I came home to find Ella wearing one of Ava's sweaters, and Ava just laughed and said, "She looks better in my clothes than I do." I laughed too. But later, lying in bed, I wondered why Ella had changed in her room instead of ours. I asked questions silently, then buried them with excuses. because if I voiced them out loud, everything I built might crack. And I couldn't afford another fracture in my life. There was also that day I left my phone on the kitchen counter and Ella's message notification popped up. Wish we could talk like that again. Miss it. I asked her about it, and she shrugged, said it was a friend from college. I wanted to believe her. Needed to. I had learned to live in survival mode for so long that peace felt unnatural, like I had to protect it at all costs. And so, I let the moments pass, one by one, hoping they meant nothing, telling myself they meant nothing. What I didn't realize then, what I refused to admit, was that I had created a system where everyone took from me, and I let them. I had confused love with loyalty and loyalty with silence. And in doing so, I had taught Ava that she could do anything and I'd still be there. Even if she burned the house down, I'd sweep the ashes and hand her a coat for the cold. I didn't know it then, but everything was already falling apart. The wedding was 6 weeks away, invitations were out, and Ella had moved in full-time. Ava had taken over most of the planning. She said she wanted to do something meaningful for me, to finally give back. And I believed her, because despite everything, I still believed in my sister. I didn't know the betrayal was already blooming right under my roof. It started small, barely a ripple, but I felt it in my gut before my brain could make sense of it. A slight hesitation in Ella's kiss. A shift in Ava's tone when she asked about wedding plans. There was a new closeness between them, but not the kind sisters-in-law should share. It was charged, subtle, and when I finally noticed, it hit like a slow fever. One afternoon, I came home earlier than planned, just a couple hours ahead of schedule. I was hoping to surprise Ella with her favorite dessert and finally get a quiet night with her away from all the wedding stress. But as I walked in, I heard their laughter first, drifting from the kitchen. Then silence. Just like that. It snapped off the moment I stepped in. I didn't call out. I stood in the hallway, listening. There was whispering, hurried footsteps. When I rounded the corner, they were both smiling, but it felt wrong. Forced. Ella reached for the dessert like she hadn't just been hiding something, and Ava pretended she had just arrived even though I saw her keys already on the counter. From that day forward, everything changed. I couldn't unsee what I saw, couldn't unknow what I knew deep down. I began paying attention, really paying attention, not the kind of passive trust I'd lived with, but focused, sharp observation. When Ella took longer to respond to my texts, I checked the timestamps on Ava's. They always seemed to align. I started noticing how they sat during movie nights, legs crossed toward each other, hands brushing as they passed popcorn. And once, while half asleep in bed, I saw Ella texting. I asked who it was. She said it was her mother. I asked to call her, jokingly, and she froze. That freeze spoke volumes. She smiled, nervously, and turned the phone face down. Too late, she said. But I had already seen the contact name flash for half a second. It wasn't her mother. It was Ava. Still, I did nothing. Said nothing. Because the man I had become, the fixer, the protector, was terrified of confrontation. I was afraid that if I ripped open the truth, everything I had poured myself into would bleed out. I didn't want to admit I'd sacrificed my entire 20s for a sister who could look me in the eye and lie. I didn't want to believe that the woman I planned to marry, the woman I told secrets to in the dark, could love me and betray me in the same breath. So I played along. I kept smiling. I kept pretending. I went to tux fittings and food tastings and let Ava pick the centerpieces like she wasn't already burning everything behind my back. That's the thing about betrayal. It rarely comes from enemies. It comes from the ones you kept warm with your own fire. The week before the wedding, I reached a breaking point. I was tired. Physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted. I needed answers. I needed the truth to either destroy me or set me free. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I left work early, again without warning, and drove home. But this time, I didn't park in the driveway. I parked down the street. I walked slowly, quietly, heart pounding so hard I thought I might collapse before I reached the door. When I stepped inside, the house was silent. Too silent. But I heard faint music playing. Ella's favorite playlist, the one I made for her months ago. It was coming from the living room. And there they were, sitting together on the couch, her head on Ava's shoulder, their hands tangled like roots of a tree I never planted. They didn't jump. They didn't pull apart. They didn't even pretend. It was almost as if they were relieved I had finally seen it. Ava looked at me first, calm, even serene, and said, "I didn't mean for this to happen, but you always get everything." Her voice wasn't sorry. It wasn't broken. It was bitter, sharp, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as the little girl I raised, but as the woman who believed she had been wronged by my existence. Ella tried to speak next, but I held up a hand. I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't need apologies shaped like lies. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left. Drove until the city lights turned to shadows and the pain started to feel like numbness. That night, I sat alone in a motel room, still in my work clothes, staring at the ring I had planned to put on Ella's finger in less than 7 days. The same ring Ava helped me choose. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt hollow, like everything I'd built had collapsed in complete silence, and all I could do was sit among the ruins and listen to the echo. But beneath that silence, something darker began to rise. Not rage, not vengeance, something deeper, a realization. For years, I had played the role of the giver, the one who carried weight without asking for anything in return. But what had it earned me? Heartbreak, humiliation, disrespect. It was in that motel room that the man I used to be began to die, and someone colder, sharper, and far more dangerous began to take his place. I canceled the wedding the next morning. No explanations. Just one mass email. The wedding will not take place. Please consider your gifts returned. I shut off my phone. Then I went home, packed a single bag, and disappeared. I didn't even look at them. I simply walked past the living room where they now lived like lovers in a house built from my bones, and I left. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't vanish out of weakness. I vanished to watch, calmly, from a distance, as everything they built on my back began to collapse. I moved to another city and started over quietly. No dramatic announcements, no petty messages. I didn't scream at them online or burn their names in front of mutual friends. I didn't need to, because while they were busy celebrating the life they stole from me, they had no idea I had already pulled the foundation out from under them. You see, I never just loved. I planned. I organized. I documented. That's what you learn when you grow up too fast. You don't just survive. You prepare. It started with the house, the one they assumed would be their little honeymoon nest. What Ava never knew was that despite all her assumptions, the deed was never in both our names. When our parents passed, everything was willed to me. Legally. Quietly. Because even in their final days, they knew Ava didn't have the discipline to hold power. I let her believe she had a stake, even let her decorate the house, choose furniture, paint walls in her favorite colors. I wanted her to feel safe. But after that night, I logged into the property account and started the sale process. 3 weeks later, the house was listed. Within 2 more, it was sold. Fast, cash offer. Ava called me then. First time in weeks. "What's happening with the house?" she asked. Her voice trembled. I said 4 words. "You no longer live there." She screamed, cried, called me selfish, accused me of destroying her life. I didn't reply. I simply texted her a copy of the property deed and the new owner's contact. "You've got 10 days, I wrote. I suggest you pack." I blocked her after that. Not because I was angry, but because I had learned the most powerful act of revenge wasn't shouting. It was erasing. Cleanly. Silently. Permanently. But it didn't stop there. Remember the college tuition I paid for? I had kept every receipt, every email, every direct transfer log. And I had created a private trust in her name. money I set aside just in case she ever needed a lifeline. It wasn't much, but it was enough to help her start a business or buy a car or go back to school. I had opened that account years ago, never told her about it. When she betrayed me, I transferred every cent, nearly $47,000, into a charity for foster youth, a cause my parents had once supported. I didn't leave a dollar behind. She wouldn't have appreciated it anyway. Her idea of love was convenience, and I had spent too many years being convenient. Ella tried to reach me once, sent a long, flowery email titled, "Please, can we talk?" I read it, every word. She wrote about how she didn't plan it, how things just happened, how love was complicated. She said she still wore the ring at night and cried for what we had. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded her message to her employer's ethics board, along with screenshots of her private messages with Ava during our engagement, including a few that made it very clear she'd been spending nights with my sister even while wearing my ring. I attached a statement, calm and factual, noting the timeline and conflict of interest, especially since Ella worked in HR, a department that valued integrity and discretion. 2 weeks later, she was quietly let go from her job. A mutual friend told me. I didn't celebrate. I simply made tea and went to bed early. And Ava? She spiraled. Without the house, without Ella's job income, without access to me, she had nothing. She tried to rebuild, reached out to cousins, old college friends. But by then, her reputation had caught up to her. The girl who used to ride on borrowed generosity finally had to walk on her own. And it turns out, when you've burned every bridge, all you have left is smoke. The last I heard, she moved into a studio apartment across town and was working retail again. That same friend said she looked tired, older than she was, alone. I never smiled when I heard those things, but I didn't ache either. I had emptied all my hurt in that motel room the night I saw them on my couch. After that, I wasn't angry. I was done. I had spent most of my life building things for people who took them without thanks. Now, I was building for me. New city, new name on the mailbox, a smaller apartment, quieter neighborhood, fewer contacts in my phone. I didn't try to be happy. I just tried to be free. And slowly I was. I met people who didn't know my history. I found joy in small routines. Morning walks, weekend books, dinners cooked for no one but myself. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. One day, nearly a year later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just one sheet of paper. No greeting. Just one sentence. "You were the only one who ever really loved me, and I ruined it." No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. Ava. I folded the letter and burned it in my sink. Then I opened the window and let the smoke out. There's a peace that comes when you stop giving people the power to rewrite your story. My sister taught me many things: how love can be twisted, how gratitude can sour, how betrayal can wear the face of family. But in the end, she taught me the most important lesson: that silence can be the loudest answer. And Ella? She disappeared from my world like a guest who overstayed her welcome. I didn't stalk her socials. I didn't check in. She became what she always was: a temporary visitor in a life I spent years building. So when people ask me why I'm alone, I just smile. I'm not alone. I'm untangled. And in the stillness of my home, I know I've won. Not with noise or chaos or revenge dipped in venom, but with distance, with dignity, with a quiet so loud, they'll hear it for the rest of their lives. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't fire, it's freedom. And your silence? That's your power.